Representative Hughes, Liz, so grateful. But it's really important to get this right. I'm going to end with Patrick McCarthy was an expert in the litigation in front of Judge Dick about putting kids in Angola. And on the stand, he told everybody in that room, including the head of OJJ, this is hard work. It's really, really hard work. These are human beings that are traumatized, and they have all the needs that our teenagers have, every single one of them. I know that this is probably not something that folks want to hear, but it's got to be said. The vast majority of these young men are Black. Vast majority.
That's it. 2,000
kids locked up in 2000 or 1998, 90% of them Black. That has not changed. The children we're locking up, the children we are not treating, the children we are re-traumatizing are almost all Black adolescent males. And that's just not right. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for your powerful words and your commitment throughout everything that you continue to do. We were going to hear from Southern University Law Center Chancellor John Pierre. He could not be with us this morning, but I just want to take a moment to thank him for his leadership. As I started off at the beginning of the meeting talking about the partnership between OJJDP and SULC, what that has done and what that is doing for us as a commission, it's really hard to put a value on it. But to have Chancellor Pierre to agree to step up and to be a partner and provide the support that they're supporting, I just want to just personally thank him, because we're going to need that partnership to help carry out the work that we're trying to do. So I just want to especially thank Chancellor Pierre for his vision, and again, Ada, for your great work that you're doing. Thank you so much. So now we're going to introduce someone that really needs no introduction, but I'm thankful most days that she asked me to get involved in this. I honestly didn't know what I was signing up for when she said, "Hey, look, we need to get the JJRAIC Commission going again, and they have an appointment from the Senate, they have an appointment from the House, and we need you." I was in the House at the time. We need someone to kind of get it going again. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. Let's." Had no idea. I didn't know much about Act 1225 at the time. Was this before COVID or during COVID? This was before COVID. Okay. But has since I've learned so much, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm so grateful that I was asked to be a part of this, because I've learned how important this work is. So Ms. Gina Womack is the Executive Director for Family and Friends of Louisiana's Incarcerated Children. She's a tireless advocate who's dedicated her life to uplifting and empowering our youth. Her presence here reflects not only her profound commitment to our cause, but also her invaluable contributions as a member of the JJRAIC. Through her unwavering efforts, Gina has been a steadfast voice for those who often go unheard, advocating for policies and practices that prioritize the rehabilitation and support of our youth. As we gather to commemorate the 20th anniversary of Act 1225's passage, Gina Womack's insights and advocacy provide a crucial perspective on the challenges and opportunities we face in the realm of juvenile justice reform. It's individuals like Gina who embody the spirit of our collective mission to create a system that nurtures, supports, and uplifts our youth towards a brighter future. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Gina Womack, a dedicated advocate and valued member of the Juvenile Justice Reform Act Implementation Commission.
One quick thing. David is the great litigator, and you said you got to have great litigators when you're fighting that fight. I've got a new title for Gina. Gina is the great agitator.
There you go.
And she was agitating you until you're going to do the right thing. And she is a true champion. So the great agitator.
In a good way. And I accept that. gratefully. I want to thank everyone for being here today. I mean, this has just been like a great blast from the past, and just thinking about everything that it took to get us to this moment, all the great minds working tirelessly. Just thank you, and thank you all for accepting the charge. Um, Today is a very important step in the right direction for the families and the youth in Louisiana. It's also why I want to thank and acknowledge the members of families and friends of Louisiana's incarcerated children, FLIC, who've traveled here from for this occasion from various parts of the state in the bad weather. I came to this work over 25 years ago, working at JJPL. It was just really interesting to track back and to think about all the things that was happening. And you can't imagine how hard it is to hear from parents who love and want the best for their children, and they're struggling and they're searching for help for their young persons and to support them and their families, and can't find the services that they need. And also continue to hear the negative narratives. I never, this was my first introduction to like policy and legislation and the criminal justice system to this extent. And so to hear the narrative, like from policymakers, that these parents don't love their kids and call them throwaway children. Our kids should never be called or even thought of as throwaway children. And it's our most vulnerable families and communities that have to constantly step up and fight. So about 20 years ago was the families and the youth, and I'm so glad to hear, and basically Senator Cravens and, David did most of what I had to say, but I'll reiterate it. It was the families and the youth that brought about the closing of Tallulah and the passage of Act 1225, because they were the ones experiencing firsthand the impact of abuse and the violence in the youth prisons. And when the promises of Act 1225 weren't fulfilled, it's been the families and the youth that have continued to keep the issues at the forefront by leading direct actions, educating themselves about how this system works or does not work, educating the public, and continuously calling for transformation of the justice system into a model of care and support for their families and children. Imagine how hard it is for families living in different parts of the state who are experiencing disenfranchisement, who are fighting to feed their kids, clothe their kids, send their kids to schools and schools that don't want them, to also have to come to Baton Rouge on a regular basis to continue to fight for their kids and fight for something that they fought for and still didn't get. I need people to think about that for a little bit. So we know we need to continue to listen and to be led by these families. They know what's right for them and their communities, what works and what doesn't work. And if that isn't enough, and sadly, it often isn't for our policymakers or the youth justice experts and research that backs it up. That's why it has been so disturbing over the last 20 years to witness the lack of commitment to implementing Act 1225, to continue to witness the mismanagement of funds and the perpetuation of a misguided narrative that sensationalizes youth crime instead of focusing on its root causes. We also do a disservice to our communities when we withhold care and support from our youth, because we know that providing resources, activities, supports, and rehabilitation makes us all safe. We've heard how hard it's going to be. We know it's going to be hard. It's hard work. But we're talking about our kids. And every child that is birthed should be worth it. Should be worth it to all of us. Until we get this right, the youth in the system will face violence and harm, and they will act out with violence and harm. The recent incident at Swanson is an example of the system's cycle of trauma and violence. We have heard the numerous reports of the young people in OJJ being essentially tortured with pepper spray, solitary confinement, extreme heat, and shackles and handcuffs while showering. We then see how our youth respond by trying to escape the system and resorting to violence. The only way we can make amends for this is to take direct and immediate actions toward the implementation of Act 1225. I am hopeful that today signals the intention, resolve, and determination it will take to transform our system into a model of care that was promised over 20 years ago. At this time, I have the privilege to bring up a young person to speak, a remarkable young person, Tamia Sinans, who has been an amazing force in Flick. Tamia is a recent graduate from my alma mater, Eleanor McMahon High School. She's now a student at Delgado. She's a leader in Flick who is coming and to carry the baton that has been handed to her by one of our Flick co-founding members, her grandmother. I welcome Tamia Sinans to share a story.
Hi, everyone. So,
Good morning.
hello.
Good morning.
My name is Tamia Sinans. I'm 18 years old, and I am a co-founder of Flick's Black Girls Rising and a granddaughter of the co-founder of Flick, Friends and Families of Louisiana's Incarcerated Children. Today, as state leaders,
Just talk louder, sweetheart, please.
Sorry, I'm a little under the weather, so I'm sorry. Today, as state leaders remember the 20th anniversary of Act 1225, I'm here to share my support for our youth, give you a little history from my family's perspective, and share my thoughts and concerns on how to move forward. 20 years ago, my grandmother fought to close Tallulah Youth Prison with Flick because of the harsh treatment of children in that facility. One of those children was my father. She was part of a group of parents that came together because they wanted to see an end to abuse and violence in youth prisons and to see more positive changes for their kids and all kids. At the same time, the prison was closed. She also fought for a new law, Act 1225, which created this commission to build more community resources and healthy environments for our youth in our communities. Yet those promises have not been fulfilled. That's why I'm here today to thank you for understanding the importance of Act 1225 and to ask all our state leaders to fulfill the promise they made in 2003. It's important for families like mine and so that other families don't have to go through what ours went through. For me, it's sad and concerning to see how young people continue to be treated harshly and like they are adults, even sent to Angola State Penitentiary. This is the wrong direction to go in. We have to recognize that youth brain development is different, and many of these kids have been through a lot of trauma. I strongly believe in letting kids be kids and that our youth should be able to make mistakes with their adolescent minds and adverse childhood experience because they are suffering for the lack of community resources, support, and love in their community. Instead of counselors, cops are used. Instead of love, they receive hate. And if a safe and healthy future is really wanted for our youth, we need to build a system of support and actual rehabilitation and close all youth prisons and invest in our communities. This was the vision of Act 1225, and I'm glad that all of you are here 20 years later to keep that vision alive for families like mine. We still need this change, and my family will continue to fight for it. And I'm here to support you as well and fight for these changes for our youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Tamia, to all of our invited guest speakers. We're now going to transition to reports from our youth serving agencies. We're going to start with Ms. Crystal Stevens from OJJ, followed by Mr. Simone Gonsolin. He's a consultant with the American Institutes for Research, but also has very deep institutional knowledge of things here, all juvenile justice related in Louisiana. Ms. Ada Goodley Lampkin, who's the director of the Lewis A. Berry Institute for Civil Rights and Justice at Southern University Law Center, will wrap up the report section by providing us with a glimpse into the strategic plan and proposed bylaws for the commission to review and discuss. Before we move into that, I just want to give my colleague an opportunity just to address the commission, because he unfortunately does have to depart early. I was very serious when I said he's a very packed schedule. Drove up here to Baton Rouge to be at this meeting today. Has to get back to New Orleans for several other meetings, but I did want to give Representative Hughes just a moment, if he so chooses, to just say a word or two.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me first thank you for your leadership and your partnership in this work, and certainly you've been a bold and loud and vocal voice on these issues. Want to thank all of the youth that are here today. Your voice is so powerful, and Gina, you know, I know my dear friend Senator Cravens called you the great agitator, but you know, I really look at you as someone that pushes us all to think outside of the box and get things done. Really tough things. I know you and I and others had the opportunity to partner on issues dealing with student discipline to try to keep our students in school rather than being suspended and expelled. So thank you so much for your heart always being for children. I do apologize that I'm going to have to depart at about 11:15. I have an item on special order before the New Orleans City Council. And so I deeply apologize, but I really look forward to being active in this work. Moving forward, it's critically important. You know, I'm so glad, you know, trauma was mentioned this morning, and we established recently in the House a subcommittee on mental health. And every chance I get, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, you know, trauma is something that has to be front and center because it comes in many forms. And it's something that we have not done a good job addressing amongst our most vulnerable populations, and particularly our youth. And so, again, just really look forward to being a partner. Thank you so much, and look forward to being actively involved.
Thank you, Rep. I appreciate you. Okay, so we're going to move to reports. Ms. Stevens, oh, there she is. Okay, we have Ms. Stevens here from OJJ. If you could please just go forward with your report. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all, and good morning. I am the Executive Management Advisor for the Office of Juvenile Justice, and I will be presenting on behalf of Deputy Secretary Nelson today. I'm going to start with addressing the population in total. As of November the 29th, we do have 3,083 youth in our custody, and of that 3,083 youth, we have 344 in secure care, which comprises 11% of our population. We also have 351 youth in our non-secure care, which also comprises 11% of the population. And we have 2,276 youth in community-based supervision who receive services in the home, which comprises 74% of OJJ's population. As of November the 29th, we have 30 youth pending secure placement and 34 youth pending non-secure placement. In regards to the secure care facility specifically, we have 70 youth in ACY, Acadiana Center for Youth. We have 14 females. This is our female population that has been transitioned to St. Martinville. There are 14 girls in St. Martinville. We have 36 males in Bridge City. We have 73 males in our Swanson Center for Youth at Monroe. We have 48 boys in our Swanson Center for Youth in Columbia. And when it comes to the non-secure facilities, of our 351 non-secure youth in OJJ custody, they're placed between residential, family support youth transition homes, transitional housing, shelters, and residential non-medical group homes, which are divided between the northern region and the southern region. When it comes to the transition of the girls from where into St. Martinville, the transition was successful. And since then, we've had 2 to 3 girls that have been able to be released back into their homes. The girls received no disruption in services, so they continue to receive all of the services that they received at Ware at St. Martinville. Now, when it comes to the educational accomplishments within OJJ, 2 of the 3 alternative schools, Riverside Alternative and Southside Alternative, have received full accreditation. So any restraints or restrictions that were posed when it comes to their accreditation has been lifted. Our graduation rates have increased by 34%, and 32 youth have received either a high school diploma or a high set. In addition to that, 10 youth have received OSHA certifications. In addition, our school performance scores have increased. So when it comes to Riverside Alternative, in 2022, our school performance scores was 69.5, and as of 2023, they're now 85.1. So we went from a C rating to a B rating. When it comes to Southside Pine Hill Alternative, we went from 58.8% to a 70%, which went from a D rating to a C rating. We still are working with our Central Southwest Alternative School. Their rating went from a 47.1 to a 49.6 rating. It's still an F, but we're 1% away from a D score. In addition, OJJ has partnered with the Louisiana State Library to provide resources to books to our youth in order to help increase when it comes to literacy. We also have implemented literacy coaches as well as dyslexia screenings and programming. When it comes to the transition into the new Swanson is slated to be completed by the end of this month. And with that being said, the goal is to transition the youth into Swanson beginning January. We don't foresee any barriers to the transition of the youth and to the completion of the new facility, but we want to ensure that the new construction that's implemented, that we can safely house our youth and our staff. The facilitation of the new Swanson does also allow for the full implementation of the tiered system. So with that being said, there was past legislature that was passed requiring that we implement the tier system. So with the onboarding of the new Swanson, we will be able to begin the implementation of the tier system. Now I want to discuss some challenges that OJJ is facing. When it comes to our youth, 90% of our youth have sustained trauma. And as time progresses, mental health diagnoses are not decreasing, they're increasing. So we do need increased support when it comes to clinicians, the number of clinicians, and the ability to provide living wages to clinicians. It's also important that when it comes to selecting clinicians, we have to find individuals who have a vested interest in working with youth. Just because there are clinicians that are available, not many want to work with our population. So that is a challenge. And I want to expound on a comment that Ms. Womack stated. It's true. When it comes to family engagement, transportation is a huge barrier. Many of our parents and our families don't have the resources to fully engage with their kids if their children are in Jefferson and they're in Shreveport. So on my team, I oversee the family liaisons who are the conduits between the families and the facilities. If the parents have any type of discrepancies with the facilities, they reach out to the family liaisons, and it's that person's responsibility to try and get that issue clarified. Transportation is a huge barrier. And any support that we can lend to our families, we want to continue to get them engaged in the treatment plans of these youth, of the children, of our children. We also need, when it comes to our challenges, increase funding for support to group homes, and community-based providers. So because the bulk of our population does receive in-home services, the group homes are now stating they're not receiving enough funding to pay the staff sufficiently to retain the staff. So they're also sustaining a loss in staff as well when it comes to group homes. And lastly, when it comes to continued support regarding legislative acts, such as Senator Duplessis, your Senate Resolution 98 is a huge contributing factor to the ability to provide services to our youth who are detained and the ability for those services to be billed to Medicaid. The ability to bill Medicaid for mental health services can tremendously help our youth who have mental health disparities.
Thank you. We're working on that, and it is something that I think nationally we're seeing some movement towards on the Medicaid piece, because for those of y'all who are not familiar, Medicaid is prohibited to being used for individuals who are incarcerated. But this is a huge problem when we're talking about corrections and trying to provide services to our young people. We've seen some movement in the state of California. They've made some changes around behavioral health services for returning citizens that are within like 30, 60, 90 days. But I've asked the Department of Health to work with the administration and basically come up with a plan for how we can explore adopting this waiver to try to take advantage of a limited scope of services for young people, particularly around the area of mental health. And then we can, that basically won't be something that we have to pay for. Let Medicaid pay for that. But I think we're seeing some trends happen on a national level, but it is a crucial issue that we have to deal with.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up on that,
Yeah.
I just wanted to alert to that point. On Wednesday, December 13th, at 10 a.m.,
Excuse me.
the Mental Health Subcommittee of the House Health and Welfare Committee will be meeting. And agenda item number 1 is a follow-up discussion on mental health services for children, adolescents, and young adults. I think anybody that could attend that meeting, public testimony is welcome at all of these meetings, and reiterate the need for these services is absolutely critical and crucial. So I'll send this information to you, Mr. Chairman, and you can send it to the commission.
Thank you.
But to your point, we are sounding the alarm that Medicaid has got to step up, in order to provide these services. So 100% agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I just also, I got a couple of questions and comments, but I do want to.
Are you done with your presentation for
Yes.
now? Okay, all right, go
Yeah.
ahead, all right.
I-
Before we jump into Q&A.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rep. All right, okay. And Mr. Pickman has some questions as well.
Unless Gina covers it.
All right.
So just kind of want to make some point, and then I do have a question or so. But I think, the beauty to me of Act 1225 is to be able to look at the system as a whole, right? And so the front end around the educational pieces and the mental health services and connect the dots. And so this meeting is really important because we have some business to take care of, right? Just to let folks know, it's still kind of pomp and circumstances, but we need to be able to get our bylaws to tell us how to function, to really bring about our subcommittee groups, which is going to connect all of the front end of the system, so the public welfare system, the education folks, to be a part of the conversations and the solutions. And so we do know that there's many tables. So as Representative Hughes was mentioning about what's happening in mental health, and we have this division about all the work that's happening and the pieces rarely come together. So what excites me more is about after we get from this meeting and we approve or we get bylaws, because we need to know how we're going to function as a commission and talk about the strategic plan, then we can roll up our sleeves and do some work. I have a comment in regards to the family engagement, and I will follow up because that's a huge challenge that we'd like to figure out how to overcome, which I think we can definitely do that, and where Flick can provide some support in helping to possibly get some families to the facilities, but also being advocates. What we do best is being advocates for families. So when they're coming to be a part of the treatment plan, I'd like to see us be able to participate with the family as part of the treatment plan. So we can definitely follow up around that part and see how, what kind of funds OJJ has for that and how we can do some kind of contractual piece. But one of the questions I have is, that Swanson is coming on board. It's finishing up, but coming on board in January. So just wanted to see if you could elaborate more in regards to the plan of staffing, because we know staffing has been a crucial issue. And I can hear Senator Craven saying really loudly, like, um, and even David, bricks and mortars is not gonna fix the problem. You can, build whatever the problem is. Do we have the staff that we need to be able to care for our kids? And what's the ratio of staff to youth? And what's your plan around that to make sure that you have, that OJJ has the quality and the correct staff to work with youth, not adults, so that they can provide the supports for the 90% of the youth that have severe trauma. Like, that was an amazing statement. And so all of our work should be around treatment and services and trauma supports for our young people. And I'd love to hear more about the plans you have for that.
When it comes to our recruitment and retention in regards to the Swanson Monroe facility, we have had some improvement when it comes to the ability to recruit staff as well as retain staff. Now, when it comes to the specified youth to staff ratio, I would have to get back with you with that specified number. But I am aware that we have increased our numbers to the point where we've terminated our contract with adult DOC probation and parole, so they no longer have to come and assist with our staffing. We continue to work on recruitment. In addition to providing in-service training to our staff who we already have on board to help them identify when you come across a youth who may be acting out, you don't have to act in aggression. You have to meet them where they are. With that, teaching them de-escalation tactics and identifying mental health barriers, mental health disparities. So if a youth is acting out, it doesn't necessarily call for aggression. Assess the situation and act accordingly. So we are implementing in-service trainings to better help our staff identify mental health needs as it pertains to our youth. When it comes to our onboarding of the Swanson facility, we do have a specified unit called the Cypress Unit. That's a 30-bed building that is designed to house those who have persistent behavioral issues. Just because a youth acts out once does not call for them to be placed in Cypress Unit. It has to be a pattern, consistent behavioral issues in order to be placed in the Cypress Unit. And with the Cypress Unit, it gives them individualized space. In addition to, when it comes to clinicians are going to work with these youth specifically to help identify their needs. We do have, as I stated, 90% of the youth have sustained trauma. But of that 90%, there are many of those who have experience an exacerbated amount of trauma that causes them to act out more aggressive than others. We have identified those, not the specific, I should say, we've identified the youth, but we still need to identify specific staff to place in working with those specific youth. So we still have things that we're working on and things that we have to bring to the table.
Okay. Any follow-up questions? Thank you. Mr. Pittman?
Thank you. Richard Pittman with the Louisiana Public Defender Board. I know the answer to this, but for people who don't, am I correct that the Office of Juvenile Justice does not have the authority to decide who comes into its custody or who leaves its custody?
I'm going to say that's above my pay grade.
Okay. Okay, so then you don't know who does have the authority to decide who comes into its custody or who leaves its custody.
I know we don't have the ability to decide who comes into OJJ's custody.
Okay.
But I know that when it comes to stepping down, there is some discretion that
I mean,
OJJ may
leaving
have.
entirely.
Oh, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And do you know who does have that, who does make those decisions?
The court system.
Courts? Judges?
Mhm.
Okay. Do you know and have available how many or what percentage of the youth in your custody are there whose most serious adjudicated offense is for a nonviolent offense?
We do, and I can get that information too.
Okay. Do you have a guess about what that is? Okay. What about how many are there for misdemeanors?
I have that information that we had to present to the Louisiana Violent Crimes Task Force in
Okay.
regards to violent versus nonviolent crimes and the specified offenses. I do have that information specifically with those percentages. I just don't recollect that right now.
All right. What about fins? Same thing?
Same thing.
Okay. Do you have any idea how many of those would have anticipated maximum release dates 2025 or later?
Same, and I would have to
Alright.
get that information to you. Like I said, we
Okay,
have the
thank you.
information we had to present. Yeah.
All right,
I had it, but
thank
just
you.
not with-
Apologize, I couldn't ask those ahead of time.
So, you'll be able to provide us with that information?
Yes,
Yeah.
I actually have
Okay.
that data, readily available.
All right. Yeah, I think that would be great. if you
I
could,
would like that
share
data
that.
as well.
Share that with the commission.
Okay.
Ms. Stevens, thank you for your work. Thank you for being here. And we're gonna obviously have to work in close collaboration with OJJ. I've always said, and I will continue to say, the only way that we can make this work is if OJJ tells us what the challenges are, which you've laid out several. And sometimes we're gonna have to come to OJJ and say, look, y'all say this is all good, but it's really not all good. You know, and that's been one of the big challenges that I face as a legislator is that you get a call from a family, or you get a call from an advocate, or whatever, or you get a letter, and you're hearing about situations, and you talk to the administration officials, and they're saying everything's okay, but it's not okay. We have to be open and transparent about what's going wrong so that we can best help you all. So when I'm talking to my colleagues about the changes and the investments that we need to be making, I don't need OJJ, we don't need OJJ telling us everything is all good so that, we can just keep doing business as usual. We need OJJ telling us what's going wrong so we can help you all do the job that you all charged to do. And I've expressed this numerous times to Mr. Nelson. Not sure what this new administration or what their view is going to be with respect to this. There's still a lot of questions there, but I'm gonna keep drilling that point home that we have to look as though we're working together. This is a commission that's here to not just hold OJJ accountable, but to also provide the support so that you all can do your job. So that's why we appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Can I make one last statement?
Of course.
With that being said, in regards to the new administration, it is very important that we all continue to work together as one band with one sound when it comes to the youth of Louisiana. In my regard, I have a background with DCFS case management, and I worked with DOC, but in the reentry component. So I understand the front end of the system as well as the back end of the system. And it's important for us to do whatever we can do to keep our youth from coming into the deep end of the system and to keep them from coming into adult DOC.
Right.
Yes,
Absolutely.
it's important.
So I appreciate that sentiment. However, we got to get to being on that one accord.
We do.
And from this end, we'll never be on an accord where it's okay that we're sending our young people into an adult facility. So if you all can come on to that accord, then, we might could get somewhere. But from what I'm seeing at this moment, and how our kids are being dispersed, what seems like no plan, and definitely not one that is beneficial to our youth, we're gonna really we have some work to do.
We appreciate you.
To
Yes,
say something.
Ms. Bridget.
Ms. Stevens, at the beginning, you gave us a lot of data and information, from a number standpoint. Can you provide that to us in writing? I mean, that was a lot of information to take on, and I'd like to see that, and I would like to see it kind of going forward. I'm hoping in future meetings or commission meetings, we're gonna continue to have these sorts of reports, because I'd like to be able to, from my standpoint, I think it's important for the commission to be able to track that information as we're looking at the numbers, we're looking at, at some point it's going to be graduation rates. It's going to be those sorts of things. So we can watch all of that various interplay from their education to services, all of those things that are being provided for the youth.
Thank y'all so much. Just look at the time, and we set a time. I'm trying to move us along. Obviously, we have a lot of areas to cover, and that was all very important information we just discussed that we're going to be following up on. I do want to give Ms. Goodley Lampkin an opportunity to present. Well, no, first we're going to hear from Mr. Simone Gonsolin, who's going to provide his report, and then we're going to get to Ms. Goodley Lampkin to discuss bylaws as we try to move through this agenda.
Okay. Good morning. I want to thank the commission for asking me to speak today. When I think back on Act 1225, I just think of the authors who really created this act and thought it through. I can only imagine what it was like as y'all huddled, Senator Cravens and many other folks who were at the table. But I think the strength of it, one of the strengths, is the membership of the JRAC. It was a very thoughtful approach in including all branches of government, right? You have the legislative branch, you have the courts, and obviously the executive branch as well. And then, thinking through youth defense, all those segments that are so critically important to a youngster and a family member and family members of youth who are involved in the juvenile justice system. I think that is a real strength. And I think, as Liz said, this has been recognized for 20 years as one of the best legislative acts around juvenile justice reform that the country has seen. And I mean, I've heard this through the work that I've done, since 2008, all about Act 1225 here in Louisiana. Fortunately, in 2020, they added the larger representation from family and youth advocacy groups, which of course was the missing link originally, I think, then in 2020. I've had the privilege of working nationally with child welfare, juvenile justice, education, and mental health agencies around the country. But I will tell you, I've taken what I've learned through my time here in Louisiana, lessons learned when I was the deputy director or deputy secretary of the Office of Youth Development, and also the education that I received through Act 1225 and these champions who have spoken with you this morning. And that is really the thrust of what this commission is. They are the champions to help move these initiatives, the reform efforts forward that were thought of 20 years ago. So it has guided my thinking and working with these other systems around the country. Most recently, I've had the privilege of working with OJJDP and with the JRAC and working with them to really look at how they can become that influencer around the juvenile justice reform efforts here in Louisiana. And it has been really a privilege to work with all of you and with OJJDP. Just wanted to share a little bit about the work that was done over the last 5 or so months by this commission, because I want to know your commission members have been engaged and they have been talking about the issues and many of the issues that were brought up today. But first of all, when we think about the work that has to be done, when we were in the retreat that was mentioned a little earlier, there were 4 buckets of work that really the commission focused on, and we spent a lot of time on these related issues. Number 1, what are the prevention and early intervention efforts across the state and all the child service agencies, not just OJJ, but the other agencies that impact families and children in the state? Also, how can we enhance education for Louisiana's youth in the public school system, but also how can we enhance the education of family members, of parents, and citizens within the state, as well as agencies that work with youth and families throughout the state. Another conversation that was had, we spent a lot of time on how to really gain a comprehensive look at the children who are system involved in this state. from child welfare to juvenile justice to behavioral health to education, especially those kids who have been marginalized and have been removed from school for one reason or another. And finally, as Bridget said, a huge piece of the conversation was analyzing and collecting data from the child serving agencies around the state. Yes, OJJ's information, but also the other 3 child serving agencies within the state. A second major, and so what they did was they talked about those areas, and then they started identifying action steps. And I know Ada and the folks at the Southern University Law Center are going to be adding to the action steps and adding more information to it and moving that along to really look at 1225 and move those particular components of it along. A second major component of the work that day was really to look at the purpose and the function of each of the child serving agencies in the state. And when we looked at the statute that created each of those child serving agencies, there were many, many things that were in common. We oftentimes think of, the behavioral health hat, the OJJ bucket of work. But really, there's a lot that these 4 agencies have in common, right? Education, child welfare, behavioral health, and OJJ. These were the things that we addressed as far as components that were critically important to families and youth who find themselves engaged in the juvenile justice system. What are the approaches to prevention? So this is a common area across all 4 of those agencies. Children need to be screened and assessed as necessary. Early intervention to mitigate poor outcomes is clearly another area that we discussed. Care and treatment when necessary. Reducing negative outcomes for the youth and families who touch the different systems. And also the establishment of a continuum of care, where we know one program, one service does not fit the diverse needs of the kids who are involved in the different systems. Obviously, the third component of that day, as I mentioned earlier, was data around from those 4 child serving agencies and determining what sort of data points the JRAC needs to hear about, the data that was shared from OJJ and potentially other data that Bridget brought up and Gina, but also the format in which they're going to receive this. Is going to be done here in this meeting? Is it going to be reports that are going to be done virtually? Those sorts of things. So that pretty much summarizes the work that was done during the retreat. I know Southern University Law Center, Ada will add more information to that. But I really think with some of the work done in the retreat, the commitments you have from the commission today, that they will become the champions, just like previous folks who were engaged in this particular committee, to really move those reform efforts forward. So thanks for allowing me to speak today. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Simone. Appreciate the work and your involvement on this. It's going to be crucial as we go forward. And now we'll hear a report from Ms. Ada Goodman-Baskin.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, and I just want to say thank you for all being here. I'd like for my staff to stand up because we hit the ground running, and I'd like for you to be acknowledged for all of the effort that we have undertaken since August. Diani Jackson, John Collins, Crystal Bell, Shalila Dowdy, and Amber Staples. I'm also, please, a round of applause. I'm making a point to acknowledge them because Southern University Law Center is currently taking finals, and you see where they are. We have one student who is actually taking a final right now, and that is the only reason that she's not here with us. But these other students show a commitment and a passion for this kind of work to where they prepared early, to where they could have some time before finals to be with us. So
another round of applause.
And I'm going to go through this really quickly so that we can actually have a discussion. As Simone said, we had a retreat not too long ago where we discussed some of the buckets of work. And I like that you use the word bucket because we have been struggling with how to create buckets of work for the commission members, but also for the support staff. And we decided that one retreat is not gonna cut it, right? I remember doing the strategic plan for the Juvenile Justice Commission or Sandy Krasnoff Commission in New Orleans, and that took about 2 months. So I understood also we had a learning curve. Gina has been howling into the wind about how people don't understand the power of Act 1225. And once we took about 2 good weeks to study it, I can understand why she feels that way. Act 1225 is a powerful tool, and I recommend that you all look at it, engage with it, because we expect community members and stakeholders to engage with us in this process. I have a quote by A. Philip Randolph that I cannot remember off the top of my head, but it essentially says that we won't get anything, we can't take anything, we can't hold anything without organization. And so our first order of business to provide adequate and efficient support to this commission is to be organized. And with that, we have started to redevelop, I would say, the mission, vision, and objectives of the Juvenile Justice Reform Act Implementation Commission. Not to say that what was developed before was not adequate. We just decided that we would use the language of the statute, and we would let the law be the purpose, the guiding principles, and we would build from there. So we actually used the statute line by line to develop objectives and buckets of work for which the commission members will choose and act, and also the support staff. So we actually have 2 strategic plan processes going on at the same time. We are tight. So we began, I think we're at about 2 months. We actually started in August, very end of August, began hiring in October, I believe, the end of October. We have, of course, bureaucratic processes and academic processes that we have to adhere to and understand, be mindful of. Our students have a blackout period where you cannot email them. So we had to immediately adjust once we got funding to hire, conduct interviews, but we could not conduct interviews without understanding what were the needs of the commission. And once we did a little bit of an environmental assessment with Gina, we felt like we had enough to start conducting our interviews, and so that's what we did. We developed a mission, vision, and some objectives, a timeline, and started to put together a framework for the commission to then review and make some changes. We are not creating the strategic planning process. We are supporting the commission in developing their strategic planning process. And in order to help them, we need to plan for ourselves as well. Like I said, we began with an understanding of Act 1225 and what was the purpose of Act 1225. I invite you to look at it yourself. But here's where the work started for us. Really, like I said, understanding the purpose and gathering that purpose from Act 1225 directly. And it starts with, we believe. That's our purpose. And if you read the statutes, you will see a lot in those statutes that we believe. We believe that the justice system currently should align with national best practices, not just for facilities, but for also front-end reforms, interventions, and the like. So our vision, as we have restructured it, is we will transform the juvenile justice system into a compassionate, safe, rehabilitative entity and addressing the specific needs and well-being of every young person and family it serves. The mission of the JRAC, as we have written it, is to lead the transformation of the juvenile justice system, focusing on compassion and effectiveness to prioritize the well-being of youth and families through the strategic allocation of resources, data-driven insights, collaborative partnerships, and the transformation of facilities. We aim to create a rehabilitative environment that fosters youth development and family support. We are committed to evaluating and advocating for reforms, streamlining services, and reinvesting resources to benefit children and families. By continuously addressing our evolving services, we strive to build a brighter future for our youth and communities, placing rehabilitation, equity, and well-being at the forefront of our efforts. I know you keep seeing the word rehabilitation. And I know our interns were grilled during interviews because if they did not say rehabilitation, we did not ask them back. Things that we can observe that indicate progress are our measures. That is where the commission is really going to have to come in. We provided you with a number of objectives that we developed from the statutes, but you will have to create your indicators to make sure that we can check ourselves, check our work, audit ourselves, and make sure that we have an opportunity to adjust. So how did we define the current objectives that we had? Well, we had a stellar team. Latoya Porter is not here. She's our program coordinator. Itiani Jackson, communications coordinator. Amber Staples, God bless, is taking a final right now. Shalila Dowdy. At some point, you'll have to tell people about your involvement in redistricting litigation. Victoria Ardwan is one of our civil rights scholars who's investigating cases and drawing contemporary parallels, making compelling arguments about how we need to transform our justice system. And Crystal Bell to my left, and then there's me. So first, we need to, I think, in understanding how we go back to the table. We're gonna have to call another retreat, I'm sorry. But we need to figure out what our values are. So the values of 1225 are pretty plain and simple. They're in the statutes. They say exactly what they believe, what they call the system to be, what the system should do for families and communities. And so, like I said, we made sure that those values showed up in our staff, that we are sharing our values so that we can accomplish our mission and realize our vision. We've created 3 buckets. Simone has 4. We've restructured a few things because, like I said, JRAC, thanks to OJJDP's support, is now able to really engage and handle a lot of this work, including data collection and assessment. Like I said, the commission members will be able to review, have some time to think about, discuss. We want to have some deep conversations before we decide on what our known performance indicators will be to help us mark progress along the way. We bring this up, and I decided to bring this up here in this public forum because the commission members can't do this alone. And so I'm imploring both the commission members and community and stakeholders to engage in this process. Follow us on the platforms that you normally follow us, I suppose, but we will do much more outreach so that the meeting information is much more accessible to you and that you have an opportunity to provide feedback on the strategic plan. We want you to offer reactions and suggestions. Again, we will based on feedback, published results, and after 6 months, we'll revise again. That's going to be our process. I want to wrap there so that we can look at the bylaws, which is on the next presentation, the bylaws. Yeah. Thank you.
So before you just jump into the bylaws, I have to, I feel like we need to stand up and give this team a round of applause.
Yes.
I mean, literally, because I'm totally so excited. And really blown away by what has been accomplished. What did we start this in July? September. And the dedication that has happened, we've spent time together. Adai has taken this, this has been her lifelong work. And so I feel so blessed to have a partner, that came in and got so deeply invested in this and has carried us this far. Because this allows us to get to the real work. Right. And so they've worked countless hours to understand. They took it upon themselves to really delve in and understand. And since September, this is a lot of amazing stuff that has happened in the bylaws. And And I feel so blessed because this is something I totally would have never been able to do by myself. And to have an amazing team that's gonna move us forward, it's just been a godsend. I just wanted to acknowledge and appreciate you all for that.
All right, on to the bylaws. I'm not gonna read all of these verbatim, of course. The commission members have been provided a copy. If you'd like a copy of bylaws, please email civilrights@sул.edu. But this is really for the commission members to mull over. It's a framework, a starting point, because we understand that it is very difficult to start something like this. I don't know if you've ever tried to write some bylaws, but it can be hard to start. So we wanted to give you a starting point from which to really grow and make sure that these bylaws allowed you to accomplish everything that Act 1225 asks you to. You'll have some discussions, you'll have some questions. I hope that you'll have those discussions with one another. You're welcome to do that now at this time. Chairman DePlessis, please, if you want to table this or however you want to move forward, we just want to provide it to you so that you can have an opportunity to talk about it, and also for the public to know that this is happening within the commission.
So, and I echo everything that Gina just said in terms of the work that you all have put in to help us get to this point. With respect to the bylaws, these things can be fluid at times, because when you set forth bylaws that govern a body with so many different members and other bodies, they change things. It's like fluid, right? And so we have to have some flexibility here. For example, Representative Hughes, before he left, he pointed out some proposed suggestions for possible changes that in section 1.1, it mentions that the commission shall be defined as in Louisiana Revised Statutes, Title 46, 275. Apparently that was repealed by 46-2751. So making that update. He also noted that we may want to look at changing the member who's an appointment from Southern University. It currently reads the Vice President of Administration and Management, or their designee. He suggested maybe we go to Chancellor, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And then on section 1.3, one of the other challenges that we've encountered with this commission is the rotation of the chair. It's supposed to go from the House to the Senate. So I was chair when I was in the House. Then I get elected to the Senate, and there was only one appointment from the Senate. So we ended up in this little quandary, right? So I had to go to my colleague who was appointed by the Senate and say, hey, would you mind? And she didn't mind. So we were able to work around that, because she said she could have said, no, I want to stay on it, and I wouldn't have been able to continue my service on the commission. So I think that is something we should also explore around how to maintain continuity and flow around who serves as chair. So I don't know that we necessarily have to adopt them. Do we have to adopt them today? Or should we adopt them today? Ms. Gina thinks we should adopt them today. You want to propose these amendments?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, for more discussion.
Unless we have more
Yes.
discussion.
Correct.
Yes.
So I would also add, there's in section 1.5.3, and I think I know where y'all are going with this proposal as far as the regular and active participation at meetings and whatnot. And if you don't attend a certain number of meetings, you could be subject to being removed. I would just question, and I'm not sitting as a lawyer advising the commission here. I would question statutorily if we're allowed to put that in the bylaws, because the statute does set forth the membership and how
That
we're
is
appointed to that
a
commission. So
that's a question that I had as well. I don't think we have the authority to do that, because the way the law is actually
right.
written in statutorily. So I don't actually think we have the ability and don't have the authority to do that.
And that's for 1.5.3?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, so under revised statute 46, 2752, the commission shall adopt rules and procedures as it shall find necessary for the conduct of the activities and meetings of the commission.
Those rules cannot supersede the law passed by the legislature. So that is true. That is the following statute behind the statute that actually lists who's going to appoint. But I don't think this commission can tell the Supreme Court that your person that you wanted to put on there
Right.
is actually
Yeah, so
can't serve.
I left the part out. I would also amend the statute. That was the other
Right.
part that I mentioned. We would look at amending the statute around appointments. So you're 100% correct
Yeah.
that if the statute says who is to be appointed, the bylaws cannot contradict that.
Correct.
But to 1.5.3, I believe the statute, based on what Ms. Goodley just read, may grant us the discretion to set forth attendance policies, which is that's all this section speaks to, because it says we do adopt those bylaws.
Yeah, I think that you can have those. It's just removal and things of that nature.
I got you. Yeah.
Is the issue with
Okay.
regard to that.
Yeah.
It's not whether or not we
Right.
have the authority to have in our bylaws
Yeah.
some attendance requirements, but then that calls on the chair and the vice chair
Right.
if there's a problem
Right.
to maybe make telephone calls
Right.
as the law is currently written.
I think that's the more
Yeah,
appropriate.
that was the more-
approach.
Yeah.
You know, an inquiry to either the person or to the appointing authority.
Okay.
So
Say,
is
hey,
that-
your
is the
person's not
interest
showing
really
up.
there?
Correct.
Right. Yeah. So
So I think what we're saying, like, we
we can't vote to remove, but we could.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because we can't change at this time, the person that's listed. So the vice chair has to stay until we can look at amending legislation next year, right?
Yep.
We could delete at this point, section 1.3, is that what? And because we have to change statute, I believe is what was,
I think the most appropriate is just to take out 1.5.3.
1.5.2. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Leave that issue open for later.
Right. But I was asking in regards to the
1.3.
1.3,
Oh,
that Representative Hughes mentioned in regards to the chair position, like,
Yeah, so I have not, he suggested that we probably either take it out or make some sort of statutory amendment, but I'm not prepared at this moment because I don't know what the right amendment would be. So I think we just make a note today for purposes that it's something that we need to prepare legislation for this session on how to best amend
right,
the rotation of the chair.
right. And so my suggestion was deleting, that section until we can change legislation. And then if there are no other issues, I would make a motion to.
One of the things too is looking, I had questions with regard to 1.6 and 1.61, particularly 1.61, as far as what our authority again is with regard to telling, because the law says that these people are going to make those appointments. And our ability then to micro that aspect of telling those commission members, agency departments must be able to make decisions for said agency. Well, again, that's, I don't actually think we have the authority to tell any of the people, the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate, at what level do they appoint somebody, or the Supreme Court, what level, or the Public Defender's Office or LDAA or any other organization, who those individuals are.
Yeah, it says high level, and I don't know how we define high level.
Well, it's not defined,
Right.
and that's another problem.
Can I suggest just changing the two musts in that sentence to should?
Yeah,
No objection to that.
yeah. Yep.
Right, yeah, I don't think I have an objection either. And the intention behind it is because each of us are heads of our agency and can make decisions. And so therefore, if you are sending a designee, they should be able to make those decisions. But I think that's to the discretion of the.
I don't necessarily disagree
Right,
with.
right, I get what you're saying.
I don't necessarily
So just
disagree
shall
with regard
instead of
to,
may instead of
to the
must.
idea. It's simply the language based on the statute and
So
the law.
may will change from may to, from should, shall
From
to may.
must to should
Should.
on 1.16.
There would actually be a pretty good reason for an agency head with appointing authority to appoint someone entirely outside of their agency. That would be because that person would potentially have more ability to take a strong policy position without going against any sort of rules about advocating for legislation as a state employee.
Awesome.
I don't want to put that in bylaws, but I think there is actually a good reason
Okay.
to consider appointing someone entirely outside the agency.
So,
So I know we have some proposed amendments now. We want to, let's, I say we adopt not any proposed amendments that we have, but also make note of, future potential changes that need to be made or evaluated by the commission. Does anybody else have any thoughts or, points that they want to make with respect to the bylaws that we haven't already addressed?
so I would make that motion, or did you just make the motion and I should second?
Well, I just want to make it clear for the record, the motions that are being made so that we have clarity around this. You want to go over it?
Yeah, so the motion would be, if I remember correctly, to adopt the bylaws with the proposed amendments that were stated in section 1.2 with 4.4, section 1.3, section 1.5.3, section 1.6.1, and section 1.6.2. And I have them
All right.
documented.
So we have a motion to adopt the bylaws as amended.
I'll second that motion.
We have a second. Do we have any discussions or any other questions with respect to this motion? All right, seeing none, the bylaws are adopted as amended. This will be, we will revisit this during interim, prior to our next meeting, whatever that date is set. We have, and we're gonna have to do that as well.
Right.
Yeah, we're not gonna leave here without setting that date. All right, but I do want to move us along the agenda, because now we have gone past 12 o'clock, and we have a few other orders of business that we need to cover. And sort of as we started this meeting, talking about more of the ceremonial aspect of 20 years for the adoption, passage of Act 1225. Before we adjourn, I want to present a proclamation that commemorates this monumental legislation and the impact that it has and continues to have on juvenile justice here in Louisiana. Again, I'm very honored to chair this important commission, not because of the work that we have done, but the work that we have the power to do. That's what we're here. All right, that's what we're here for, the work that we have the power to do. And our purpose remains clear, which is to focus on rehabilitation, treatment, and community reintegration for youths involved in the juvenile justice system, with the primary goal of reducing recidivism and enhancing lives for our youth, which to me equals public safety, if that's what this is really about, okay? And now we know that's what this is about, but we cannot have the conversation around public safety if we're not adequately addressing rehabilitation and treatment and reducing recidivism. This act has empowered the JJRAIC to implement restorative practices, diversion programs, and alternatives to detention in an effort to advance our understanding of juvenile justice. It's incumbent upon us to protect the youth of the state from mistreatment and ensure they have the access to the best care possible. Additionally, we want to take a moment to acknowledge the diligence of those who paved the way for this act's passage, from legislators to advocates, and express our deepest gratitude to stakeholders who have contributed to its success and pathway forward. Today, on December 1st, 2023, is proclaimed a day of recognition for the 20th anniversary of Act 1225. We stand united in our commitment to the rehabilitation of youths involved with the juvenile justice system and to their warm integration into their communities so that we can make every effort to ensure that so that Louisiana's youth have every opportunity to grow and thrive. This act is a testament to positive change, and we as stewards of its legacy are recommitting ourselves to its enduring impact for the future of our great state. Once again, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude on behalf of the entire JJRAIC. And with that, I want to present this to someone who stood right where I stand now, and that's on the Senate floor, to help get this across the finish line to get us where we are today, and that's the Senator Don Cravens. I want to present this to you. And I mean, you've given a lot of these out in your lifetime. You deserve just as many, if not more. We thank you again for your commitment and your leadership and all that you've done. We really appreciate it. Thank you. So I know y'all have heard probably enough from me today, but I just want to give some additional closing remarks as we draw the curtains on a final meeting of the year, but also the final meeting of an administration. And I'm gonna let my Madam Vice Chair, Gina Womack, you have a comment that you'd like to share?
Oh, just, we wanted to confirm a next meeting date,
Yes,
right before you do the
let's
remarks.
do it.
So do you have a proposed date? I mean, we were trying to do early January, not early in January, but like, and it seems like, I don't know if Fridays, they seem to have worked for folks. And so what about the last Friday of January?
Not good. I'm out of town that Friday, unfortunately.
Do you have another date you want to propose?
It looks like the 20th. I'm not opposed to a Monday. I don't know if that works. I mean, we have done Fridays, but I'm gonna be out of town that Friday.
That's fine. I'm not opposed to 22nd.
Yeah, the second, February 2nd also looks.
22nd or 29th.
Yeah,
The 22nd or the 29th, do either of those days work better for anyone?
Fine by me.
Oh, that would have been the 22nd. I'm sorry. Yeah, 22nd works better.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can do the 22nd, or we can do February 2nd.
Let's go with the January 22nd.
All right, so we have our next meeting date scheduled for Monday, January 22nd.
Awesome.
And by that time, we will have underwent the inaugural festivities and swearing in and organizational session. Now, we don't know what's gonna happen with this redistricting session. We may have a special session on crime and all these other things that are being talked about. We just don't know right now, but I'll plan to be here in Baton Rouge so we can have our first meeting of the new term.
You're gonna say 10 o'clock to
10
12?
10
10 to 12, yes.
Awesome.
All right. I again just want to extend my sincere appreciation to everybody who's here for your unwavering commitment to this work and this cause. Our work does not end here. This is a journey that I'm asking everybody to choose to be hopeful, right? We must be hopeful, if not for anybody, for those young people who are counting on us, that we have to choose to be hopeful despite the disagreements that we know we're gonna face and the challenges that we know we're gonna face, even from people who we would consider to be allies. You know, sometimes it's your so-called allies that make your job, even harder, okay? So, we need to just be honest about that, okay? People will find a problem with anything you're trying to do, so, these are hard conversations to have. But I'm just thankful for all of you all who are here with us today. So let's press forward, you all. I want to wish everybody safe travels back on the road if you're driving in rain, and I want to wish everybody a wonderful and safe holiday season. I'm hopeful and I'm encouraged, and most importantly, I'm grateful. So with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make that motion.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. We have a
Second.
And we have a second. Thank y'all so much. Thank y'all. All right. Meeting is adjourned.
Creative work.